The burden of existence often feels like a heavy cloak that we cannot remove. You look into the mirror and see a face that changes with the passing seasons. Deep within the eyes looking back at you, there is a question that haunts every human heart. We ask ourselves, what happens when the breath finally ceases and the body grows cold? The ego screams that it is permanent and significant and terrifyingly real. But the wisdom of the ages suggests that this isolate self is merely a persistent illusion. We are trapped in a cycle that spins with the ferocity of a wheel set on fire. To understand where the soul goes, we must first understand what the soul actually is. It is time to strip away the noise of the modern world and listen to the silence. Here begins the journey into the heart of samsara and the liberation that awaits. The concept of the cycle is not merely a philosophical abstraction discussed in dusty libraries. It is the very engine that drives the suffering and the joy of every living being. Imagine a wheel that is larger than the horizon and turns with an unstoppable momentum. This is samsara, which translates literally to the concept of wandering through unlimited time. We are all wanderers who have lost the map to our true home and forgotten our names. The Buddha did not invent this wheel, but he was the one who discovered how to stop it. He saw that living beings are propelled forward by a fuel that burns with an intense heat. That fuel is desire, and the craving for things to be different than they truly are. We crave for the pleasant moment to last forever, even though it is destined to fade. We crave for the unpleasant moment to vanish immediately, which only adds to our pain. This constant pushing and pulling creates a kinetic energy that binds us to existence. Think of a thirsty man drinking salt water because he believes it will cure his thirst. The more he drinks, the more his throat burns, and the more he desires to drink again. This is the state of the human condition in the raw and chaotic world we inhabit. We try to build fortresses of security with money and status and relationships. But the foundation of these fortresses is made of sand that shifts with the wind. When the inevitable collapse happens, we feel betrayed by the universe and broken. But the breakdown was built into the very nature of the construction from the start. The roots of our wandering lie in a fundamental ignorance of how reality operates. We mistake the temporary for the permanent and the painful for the pleasurable. This ignorance acts like a blindfold that keeps us stumbling through the dark. We bump into walls and hurt ourselves and blame the walls for being there. The cycle of samsara is not a punishment inflicted by a judgmental deity. It is a self-perpetuating system powered by our own confusion and our own attachments. Every time we cling to an identity or a possession, we tighten the chains. We are like silkworms wrapping ourselves in a cocoon of our own making. The tragedy is that we believe the cocoon is a shield when it is actually a cage. To understand where we go after death, we must look at where we go every day. We cycle through moods and thoughts and identities from morning until night. You are not the same person at noon that you were when the sun rose. 1,000 births and 1,000 deaths happen between two heartbeats. The macrocosm of a lifetime is reflected perfectly in the microcosm of a single moment. We are constantly being born into a new state of mind and dying to the old one. This is the root of the wandering and the beginning of the great discovery. If you can see the cycle in the present moment, you can begin to see the eternity. The wheel turns because we keep pushing it with our hands of desire and fear. The first step to freedom is simply to take your hands off the wheel. The mechanism that governs this turning wheel is often misunderstood in the West. We hear the word karma, and we think of cosmic justice or a reward system. People think that if they are good, they get a prize, and if they are bad, they suffer. But the teaching is far more scientific and clinical than a system of rewards. Karma simply means action, and the inevitable result that follows every action. It is the law of cause and effect applied to the moral and psychological plane. Imagine that you are a gardener, planting seeds in the soil of your own mind. If you plant seeds of anger and jealousy and greed, you will grow a forest of thorns. If you plant seeds of kindness and patience and wisdom, you will grow a garden of fruit. The soil does not judge the seed, nor does it decide to punish the gardener. The soil simply yields exactly what was placed into it, without bias or hesitation. This energy of action is what propels the consciousness forward at the moment of death. When the physical body can no longer sustain the connection to the mind, the energy releases. It is like a burst of electricity that must find a new conductor to continue its flow. The quality of that electricity is determined by the habits you have cultivated for a lifetime. If your mind has been shaped by anger, then the energy carries the frequency of heat. If your mind has been shaped by generosity, then the energy carries the frequency of light. You are building your future home with every thought you think in this present moment. Every time you choose patience over frustration, you are smoothing the path ahead. Every time you choose resentment over forgiveness, you are placing a stone in your road. The weight of your soul is measured by the attachments you refuse to let go of. This is why the preparation for the end of life is actually the practice of living now. We cannot expect to find peace at the final breath if we have lived in chaos. The momentum of a speeding train cannot be stopped in a single instant. We must apply the brakes of mindfulness and ethical living over a long distance. This understanding empowers us because it places the keys in our own hands. We are not victims of fate or pawns in a game played by invisible gods. We are the architects of our own destiny and the creators of our own future. The energy you generate today will seek a matching frequency in the cycle of rebirth. It is a physics of the spirit that is as reliable as the law of gravity. When you drop a stone, it falls, and when you cling to hate, you sink. When you let go of the heavy burdens of the ego, you naturally begin to rise. Understanding this law removes the fear of the unknown and replaces it with responsibility. You do not need to fear what comes next if you take care of what is happening now. The future is nothing more than the present moment arrived at a later time. By purifying the present, you are automatically purifying the future and the life to come. The roots of your destiny are drinking from the water you provide right now. The analysis of the soul in Buddhism presents a profound paradox to the Western mind. We are raised to believe in a permanent and unchanging soul that is uniquely ours. We think of a ghost in the machine that pilots the body like a driver in a car. But the Buddha taught the radical concept of anatta, which means no permanent self. He looked deeply into the nature of the mind and found no solid core. He found only a stream of sensations and perceptions and thoughts and consciousness. It is like a river that looks like a single entity but is always changing water. The river you step into today is not the river you stepped into yesterday. So if there is no permanent soul, then what is it that gets reborn? This is the question that confuses the intellect but creates space for wisdom. Imagine a single candle flame burning brightly in a dark and quiet room. You take a second unlit candle and bring its wick close to the first flame. The fire jumps from the first candle to the second candle in an instant. Is the flame on the second candle the same as the flame on the first? It is not the same flame because the fuel and the wick are different. But it is not a different flame either because it came from the first source. This is the relationship between the life you live now and the life to come. There is a continuity of energy and causality without a permanent entity. The momentum of your consciousness transfers to a new form like the flame. Your character and your tendencies and your deep cravings are the heat. This stream of consciousness flows on and on, driven by the thirst for existence. We are not nouns that stay the same, but verbs that are constantly happening. You are a process and an event rather than a static object or a thing. This view liberates us from the heavy burden of defending a fixed ego. If you are not a solid block of stone, you can change and evolve and grow. You are not stuck with the personality you have today for all of eternity. You are a fluid possibility that can be directed toward wisdom and compassion. The fear of death is often the fear of losing this concrete sense of self. But if you realize the self is a flowing river, the fear begins to dissolve. The water flows into the ocean and becomes the rain and falls again. Nothing is ever truly lost in the universe. It is only transformed. The energy of your life will continue to ripple outward long after you are gone. It will take new shapes and inhabit new forms based on the resonance you created. This analysis requires us to look at ourselves with a brutal and honest clarity. We must see that the things we call mine are just borrowed from the earth. The body is borrowed from the soil, and the breath is borrowed from the air. The thoughts are borrowed from the culture and the language we learned. When we strip away all the borrowed parts, what is left is the pure awareness. That awareness is the silent witness that watches the cycle turn without judgment. To identify with the witness, rather than the story, is the beginning of freedom. The destination of this energy is not a singular place like heaven or hell. The ancient teachings describe 6 realms of existence within the cycle of samsara. These are often depicted as physical worlds, but they are also psychological states. We cycle through these realms not just between lives, but between moments. There is the realm of the hell beings, which is defined by intense suffering and rage. When you are consumed by hatred and anger, you are literally in a hell realm. The fire of rage burns you from the inside out and blinds you to reason. There is the realm of the hungry ghosts, who have huge bellies and tiny throats. They are always hungry and always thirsty, but they can never be satisfied. This is the state of the addict and the person consumed by endless craving. No matter how much money or pleasure they get, it is never enough to fill the void. Then there is the animal realm, which is driven by instinct and survival and fear. When we act only on our impulses without using our higher wisdom, we are animals. We sleep and eat and mate and fight without looking at the sky. There is the human realm, which is considered the most precious of all states. In the human realm, there is a mix of pleasure and pain that allows for growth. We have enough suffering to motivate us to seek a way out of the trap. But we have enough intelligence to understand the teachings and apply the cure. Above us are the realms of the jealous demigods who always want more power. They look up at the gods with envy and look down on others with contempt. They are powerful, but they are never at peace because they always compete. And finally, there is the realm of the gods who live in bliss and long life. But even the gods are trapped in the cycle because their time is limited. They are so comfortable that they forget to practice, and eventually they fall. The goal of the wise person is not to be reborn as a god or a king. The goal is to step off the wheel entirely and end the cycle of wandering. These realms show us that our state of mind creates our reality. You do not have to die to visit hell, and you do not have to die to see heaven. You build these places with your perception and your reaction to the world. If you train your mind to see with compassion, you create a heavenly abode. If you train your mind to see with suspicion, you create a prison of fear. The cycle of samsara is fueled by where we choose to place our attention. The Buddha revealed these realms so we could see the map of our own confusion. We have all been the king and the beggar and the ghost and the warrior. We have played every role and worn every costume in the vast theater of time. It is time to stop acting and walk off the stage into the clear light. The wisdom lies in recognizing where you are right now in this very breath. Are you burning in anger, Or are you starving and craving? Or are you awake? The power to change the destination lies in the recognition of the location. Once you see where you are, you can choose to walk in a different direction. This is the ultimate empowerment and the secret to navigating the chaos of the world. We are not condemned to repeat the past if we are willing to wake up. The modern world has constructed a massive machine designed to distract us from these truths. We live in a culture that worships the temporary and tries to freeze the hands of time. Look at the way we obsess over youth and beauty as if they were permanent achievements. We spend billions of dollars trying to smooth out wrinkles and dye away the gray hair. We build skyscrapers that pierce the clouds to prove that we were here and we mattered. But this desperate race against mortality only increases the suffering and the anxiety we feel. We are told that we only live once, so we must consume everything in a frenzy. This slogan of living only once is the most dangerous lie that the ego ever invented. It forces us to run on a treadmill of acquisition and sensation until we collapse from exhaustion. We treat the planet and other people as resources to be used for our own personal pleasure. Because if this is the only life, then the consequences of our actions do not matter. This view creates a society of isolated individuals who feel disconnected from the past and future. We have lost the sense of being part of a long lineage of life that stretches forever. The illusion of separation makes us feel small and fragile and constantly under attack. We build walls around our hearts and walls around our borders to keep the others out. But the critique of the wise is that there are no others, only reflections of ourselves. When we hurt another being, we are actually planting the seeds of our own future pain. The materialistic worldview suggests that when the brain dies, the lights simply go out forever. This leads to a deep nihilism, where nothing has meaning and moral choices are irrelevant. Or it leads to a frantic hedonism, where we try to cram 1,000 years of pleasure into one. We are terrified of the silence, because in the silence we hear the truth whispering. The truth is that our toys and our titles will not fit through the door of death. We spend our lives accumulating heavy luggage that we will eventually have to drop. The critique of our modern life is that we are excellent at speed, but terrible at direction. We are moving faster than ever before, but we are driving in circles on the highway. We have mapped the entire globe and the stars, but we have not mapped our own minds. The education system teaches us how to manipulate the external world, but not the internal one. We know how to split the atom, but we do not know how to heal a broken heart. This imbalance between external power and internal wisdom is the cause of our global chaos. We have the technology of gods, but we have the wisdom of fighting cavemen. The cycle of samsara turns violently because we refuse to look at the engine. We medicate our sadness and distract our boredom and ignore the fundamental dissatisfaction. But the pain is a signal and a messenger that is trying to tell us something urgent. It is telling us that we are building our houses on a foundation of flowing water. To ignore this critique is to remain a prisoner in a cell where the door is unlocked. We sit in the darkness, complaining about the lack of light, while holding a match in our pocket. The way out requires us to stop blaming the world and start examining our own perceptions. The problem is not the traffic, or the politics, or the economy, or the weather. The problem is the mind that clings to how it wants things to be instead of what is. The second great error we make is falling into the trap of thinking the soul is a thing. We treat the soul like a precious diamond that we carry in our chest pocket. We worry about saving it, or losing it, or polishing it so it shines for eternity. But this reification of the soul creates a deep attachment to the idea of I and mine. We become defensive when our beliefs are challenged because we think our existence is at stake. If I am a solid and separate entity, then I must fight to preserve my boundaries. This leads to the violence of ideology and religion, where we kill to prove we are right. But the analysis of the cycle shows us that the self is a process and not a product. Think of a whirlpool in a fast-moving river that maintains its shape for a while. The water flowing through the whirlpool is constantly changing every single second. The shape remains recognizable, but the substance is in a state of constant flux. We are like that whirlpool made of thoughts and memories and physical sensations. When the river conditions change, the whirlpool dissolves and the water flows on. The water is not destroyed. It simply ceases to hold that particular form and shape. The critique of the ego is that it tries to freeze the whirlpool and make it solid ice. But a frozen river cannot flow, and a frozen life cannot truly be lived. We suffer because we try to grasp water in our hands, and it slips through our fingers. The more we tighten our grip, the more the mystery eludes us and leaves us empty. We fear the void because we think it means extinction and darkness and nothingness. But in the Buddhist view, the void is actually a space of infinite potential and creativity. It is because we are empty of a fixed self that we can become anything at all. If you were a solid block of stone, you could never learn or love or change your mind. Emptiness is the chalkboard that allows the universe to write a new story every day. The Western mind often confuses detachment with indifference or cold lack of caring. They think that if we do not cling to the world, we will become like robots or stones. But true detachment is actually a profound intimacy with the way things truly are. It means holding a bird in your open hand without crushing it or tying it down. You appreciate the beauty of the bird because you know it will eventually fly away. The knowledge of impermanence makes every moment more precious, not less. When you know the teacup is already broken, you handle it with greater care and love. The critique of our attachment is that it actually prevents us from loving fully. We love the idea of the person or the possession rather than the reality of it. We want things to freeze in their perfect moment and never decay or disappoint us. But life is a dance of decay and renewal, and we must learn to dance with it. To reject the cycle of change is to reject life itself in all its bitter and sweet glory. We must stop arguing with reality and start aligning our will with the flow of the river. The resistance to what is happening right now is the primary cause of our mental anguish. We scream at the rain for being wet, and we yell at the winter for being cold. The wise person puts on a raincoat or builds a fire and finds peace in the midst of it. The critique forces us to grow up and stop expecting the universe to babysit our desires. It is a call to radical maturity and the acceptance of total responsibility for our minds. The synthesis of these teachings is found in the development of an unshakable inner strength. This is not the strength of a bodybuilder who lifts heavy weights in a gym. It is the strength of a mountain that stands unmoved in the midst of a violent storm. To develop this strength, we must practice the art of mindfulness with relentless discipline. Mindfulness is not just a relaxation technique to use when you have had a stressful day. It is a weapon of the mind that cuts through the illusions of the ego and the fear. You must sit in the silence and watch the monsters of your mind rise up from the deep. You will see your anger and your lust and your terror and your deep loneliness. The instinct is to run away or to distract yourself with noise and entertainment. But the warrior of wisdom stays seated and looks the monster directly in the eyes. When you look at the monster without fear, you realize it is made of smoke and shadows. It has no power over you unless you give it your attention and your belief. This practice creates a gap between the trigger and your reaction to the trigger. In that gap lies your freedom and your ability to choose a higher path. When the world screams at you with chaos, you do not have to scream back. You can respond with a silence that is louder and more powerful than the noise. This is how we break the chain of karma and stop the wheel from spinning. We stop adding fuel to the fire, and eventually, the fire consumes itself and dies out. This inner strength allows you to walk through the valley of death without fear. You understand that the body is just a garment that you will one day have to fold up. But the consciousness that witnesses the body is beyond birth and beyond death. This is the finding of the deathless element within the changing world of time. It is like finding the calm center in the middle of a raging hurricane. The winds of gain and loss and praise and blame whip around you constantly. But you remain centered in the knowledge of who you really are beneath the mask. This synthesis brings the philosophy down from the clouds and into the street. It changes the way you drive your car and the way you speak to your children. You realize that every moment is a crossroads where you choose your next destination. You can choose the path of irritation and tighten the knot of suffering. Or you can choose the path of patience and loosen the knot for yourself and others. This is the true alchemy of the soul, turning the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom. We do not need to retreat to a cave in the mountains to find this liberation. The battlefield is your office and your living room and the grocery store line. Every time you feel the urge to snap at someone, you have a chance to practice. Every time you feel the grip of anxiety, you have a chance to breathe and let go. The practice is continuous, and it requires a vigilance that never sleeps. But the reward is a peace that passes all understanding and a heart that is free. We are building a sanctuary inside ourselves that no external force can ever destroy. This is the ultimate security in a world that offers no guarantees of safety. You become your own refuge and your own light in the darkness of the world. The synthesis is the realization that you are the hero you have been waiting for. The power to stop the cycle was never outside of you, it was always within. The final flowering of this path is the cultivation of wisdom and universal compassion. When you realize that there is no separate self, you realize that you are everything. The barrier between you and the other person dissolves like mist in the morning sun. You see that the person who hurts you is just another version of you in pain. They are driven by the same ignorance and the same burning thirst that you have known. This insight kills the root of hatred and replaces it with a profound understanding. You cannot hate the hand that strikes you if you realize it is part of your own body. Compassion becomes the logical and natural response to the suffering of the world. It is not a pity that looks down from above, but a love that looks straight across. This love is the cooling water that extinguishes the fires of the hell realms. When you walk through the world with this heart, you become a blessing to all beings. You do not have to preach sermons or convert people to a specific religion. Your very presence becomes a teaching and a source of calm for those around you. People feel the stillness in your vibration, and they are drawn to it like moths to light. You become a lotus flower that blooms in the middle of the muddy water. The mud is the chaos and the greed and the aggression of the modern world. But the lotus does not reject the mud. It uses the mud as food to grow. You transform the suffering of the world into the beauty of your own character. This is the synthesis of wisdom and action that the Buddha taught to his disciples. We do not escape the world by leaving it. We escape it by transcending it. We remain in the marketplace, but we are no longer buying what they are selling. We play the game of life, but we know it is a game, and we do not take it seriously. This lightness of being allows us to laugh when others are crying in despair. It allows us to serve without burning out because we have no ego to defend. The cycle of samsara begins to slow down as our cravings begin to fade away. We no longer need to be reborn to satisfy a hunger that can never be filled. We find the satisfaction in the present moment, in the simple act of breathing. The soul does not go anywhere because it realizes there is nowhere to go. It rests in the vast, open awareness that contains all the worlds and all the stars. This is the state of nirvana, which means the blowing out of the flame. It is not the blowing out of life, but the blowing out of the fever of desire. What remains is the cool and clear moonlight of a mind that is fully awake. This is the destination that is not a place on any map or any chart. It is the return to the home that we never actually left in the first place. We wake up from the dream of separation and find that we are the universe itself. The journey of 5,000 miles ends with the step you take right now. The synthesis is simple. Be here, be kind, and be awake to the truth. The cycle ends where it began, in the purity of the present moment. You are the architect, and you are the builder, and you are the resident. Build a home of peace, and you will dwell in peace forever. The question of where the soul goes is ultimately a question of where you are going now. Every thought is a step, and every action is a direction on the compass of fate. You have the power to break the chains that have bound you for 1,000,000 lifetimes. Do not wait for death to liberate you from the burdens of your own mind. Liberation is a choice that is available with the very next breath you take. The wheel is turning, but your hand is on the brake, and your eyes are open. Stop the wandering and find the stillness that has always been waiting for you. You are the light you seek.